Picture this: April 2000, Dallas, Texas. A 2-year-old boy named James Leininger wakes up screaming. It's the middle of the night. His parents, Bruce and Andrea, rush to his room. James is sitting up in bed, drenched in sweat, kicking his legs violently in the air, screaming at the top of his lungs. Airplane crash! Airplane crash on fire! Little man can't get out. Bruce and Andrea try to calm him down. They hold him, they rock him, but James is inconsolable. He's terrified. His eyes are wide open, but he's not really awake. He's trapped in a nightmare. This isn't the first time. The nightmares started a few months ago, shortly after James's 2nd birthday. At first they were occasional, once a week, then twice a week. Now they're happening almost every night, 4 or 5 times a week, sometimes multiple times in one night. And they're always the same: an airplane, on fire, crashing, a man trapped inside, unable to escape. Bruce and Andrea are confused. Where is this coming from? James is 2 years old. He's never been on an airplane. He's never seen a war movie. They don't watch violent TV. He plays with toy cars and stuffed animals. Where did he learn about airplane crashes? But the nightmares don't stop, and soon James starts saying things during the day. Strange things, things a 2-year-old shouldn't know. One day, Andrea gives James a toy airplane. He looks at it and points to the bottom. That's where the bombs go, Mama. Andrea freezes. How does a 2-year-old know what a bomb is? How does he know planes carry bombs? Another day, James is playing with his toys. He crashes a toy airplane into the coffee table. Andrea asks, "What happened to your plane, honey?" James looks up at her, his face serious. "It got shot down." "Who shot it down?" "The Japanese." Andrea's heart skips. The Japanese? How does a 2-year-old know about the Japanese in World War II? The nightmares continue. The statements get more specific, and Bruce and Andrea start to wonder, is their son remembering something from before he was born? This is the story of James Leininger, the 2-year-old boy who claimed to remember being a World War II fighter pilot, the nightmares that wouldn't stop, the parents who investigated his claims, the shocking discoveries they made, and the evidence that suggests James may have lived before. Let me take you through one of the most documented and compelling cases of child reincarnation ever recorded. Bruce and Andrea Leininger are not the kind of people who believe in reincarnation. Bruce is a former firefighter and corporate executive, practical, logical, a Christian who believes in heaven and hell, not past lives. Andrea is a former ballet dancer and stay-at-home mom. She's more open-minded but still skeptical of anything paranormal. They live in a comfortable home in Lafayette, Louisiana. They have one son, James, born on April 10, 1998. He's their only child. They love him deeply, and they're watching him go through something they can't explain. The nightmares started in March 2000, shortly after James turned 2. At first, Bruce and Andrea thought it was just normal toddler nightmares. Kids have bad dreams. It's part of growing up. But these nightmares are different. They're intense, violent, and they're always the same. James screams. He kicks his legs in the air as if he's trying to escape something. He yells about airplanes crashing, fire, smoke, being trapped, and he's terrified. Absolutely terrified. Bruce and Andrea try everything. They comfort him. They leave a nightlight on. They play soft music. They pray with him. Nothing works. The nightmares continue, and they're getting worse. Then James starts talking about it during the day. Not just nightmares, memories. One afternoon, James is playing with his toy planes. He lines them up on the floor. Andrea asks what he's doing. "These are my squadron," James says.
Andrea blinks.
Squadron? What 2-year-old knows that word? Another day, James points to a picture in a book. It's a photo of Iwo Jima, the famous World War II battle in the Pacific. "That's where my plane was shot down," James says casually, as if talking about a trip to the park. Andrea's hands shake. She closes the book. She doesn't know what to say. Bruce is skeptical. He thinks James is just playing. Kids have active imaginations. Maybe James saw something on TV. Maybe he overheard adults talking. There's a logical explanation. But Andrea isn't so sure. She starts paying closer attention. She writes down everything James says, and the more she listens, the more disturbed she becomes. One evening, Andrea is putting James to bed. She asks him gently, "James, who is the little man in your dreams? The one who can't get out of the plane?" James looks at her with his big blue eyes. "That's me, Mama." Andrea's breath catches. "What do you mean, honey?" "That's me. When I was big, before I was born, my plane got shot down." Andrea's mind races. Before he was born. Is James saying he lived before, that he died in a plane crash and was reborn as her son? It sounds impossible, crazy, but James is so matter-of-fact about it. He's not making it up. He believes it. He remembers it. Andrea decides to test him. She starts asking questions. Do you remember your name? From before? James thinks for a moment. James what? Just James. Do you remember anything else? I flew from a boat, a big boat. An aircraft carrier. Yes? And my plane was a Corsair. Andrea writes this down. A Corsair. She doesn't know what that is, but she looks it up later. A Corsair is a specific type of World War II fighter plane, the F-4U Corsair, flown by the U.S. Navy and Marines in the Pacific. How does a 2-year-old know that? Bruce remains skeptical. He thinks Andrea is encouraging James's imagination. He tells her to stop asking questions, to let it go, but Andrea can't. She needs to know, is her son remembering a past life, or is there another explanation? In August 2000, the Leininger family takes a trip to the Cavanaugh Flight Museum in Dallas, Texas. It's a small aviation museum with vintage planes and wartime exhibits. James is fascinated. He runs from plane to plane, touching them, studying them. At one point, James stops in front of a Corsair fighter plane. He stares at it for a long time. Andrea watches him. He looks mesmerized, hypnotized. Do you recognize this plane, James? Andrea asks gently. James nods slowly. That's my plane. Later, as they're leaving the museum, James picks up a toy airplane from the gift shop. Andrea buys it for him. On the way home, James is quiet. He holds the toy plane tightly. That night, the nightmare returns. James wakes up screaming, airplane crash, fire, little man can't get out. The nightmares are now happening almost every night. James is exhausted. So are Bruce and Andrea. They don't know what to do. They consider taking James to a therapist, but what would they say? Our son thinks he died in World War II. Then one night, Andrea asks James a direct question. James, how did your plane crash? What happened? James looks at her. His voice is calm, almost detached. I took off from the Natoma. I was shot down by the Japanese. My plane caught fire, and I couldn't get out. Andrea writes down every word. Natoma, she's never heard of it. Is it a place? A ship? She goes to the computer and searches, Natoma World War II. The results stun her. The USS Natoma Bay was a small aircraft carrier that served in the Pacific during World War II. It was part of battles at Iwo Jima, Okinawa, and other major engagements. James said he flew from the Natoma, and the Natoma Bay was a real ship. Andrea's hands tremble as she reads. How does James know this? How does a 2-year-old know the name of a specific aircraft carrier from 1945? She keeps searching. She finds lists of pilots who served on the Natoma Bay, hundreds of names. She doesn't know what she's looking for, but she keeps reading. Then James says something else, something that changes everything. It's late 2000. James is now 2.5 years old. Andrea is asking him questions again, trying to piece together his story. James, do you remember any of the other pilots? Anyone you flew with? James thinks, Jack Larson. Andrea freezes. Jack Larson, are you sure? Yes, Jack Larson. He was there. Andrea searches online. She finds veteran registries, Navy records, old photos, and she finds him, Jack Larson, a real pilot who served on the USS Natoma Bay during World War II. He flew Corsairs. He fought in the Pacific. And he's still alive, living in Arkansas. Andrea's heart pounds. This can't be a coincidence. James named a specific person, a real pilot, from a specific ship. How? But there's more. Over the next few months, James shares more details. He talks about other pilots. Billy, he says one day. Billy was there too. Andrea searches. She finds another Natoma Bay pilot named Billy. Multiple Bills, actually. The records confirm it. James talks about the missions. We flew together. We bombed targets. I got shot down at Iwo Jima. Andrea cross-references dates. The Natoma Bay was indeed involved in the Battle of Iwo Jima in February and March 1945. Planes from the ship flew bombing and support missions. Some were shot down. Everything James is saying matches historical records, but there's still a missing piece. James said his name was James, and that he flew from the Natoma. But what was his full name? Who was he? Andrea searches casualty lists. She finds the names of pilots from the Natoma Bay who died in combat. She goes through them one by one, and then she finds it. James M. Houston Jr., a 21-year-old pilot from Pennsylvania. He flew an F-4U Corsair from the USS Natoma Bay on March 3, 1945. During a mission near Iwo Jima, his plane was hit by anti-aircraft fire from Japanese positions. The plane caught fire. James M. Houston Jr. went down with his aircraft. He died. His body was never recovered. Andrea stares at the screen. James M. Houston Jr., the same first name as her son, a pilot from the Natoma Bay, shot down by the Japanese. His plane on fire. He couldn't get out. It's everything James has been saying. Every detail, every nightmare, it all matches. But is it possible? Can a child remember a past life? Can a soul be reborn? Bruce is still skeptical. He doesn't believe in reincarnation. He thinks it's a coincidence. Maybe James heard the name somewhere. Maybe someone told him a story, but Andrea disagrees. How could James know these details? He's 3 years old. He's never been to a library. He doesn't watch war documentaries. Where would he have learned about James M. Huston Jr.? Andrea decides to reach out. She finds contact information for Natoma Bay veterans and their families. She writes letters. She explains her son's nightmares and the things he's been saying. She asks if anyone remembers James M. Huston Jr. One of the veterans responds. His name is Jack Larson, the same Jack Larson James mentioned. Jack Larson is in his 80s now, living in Arkansas. Andrea calls him. She's nervous. How do you explain to a World War II veteran that your 3-year-old son claims to remember being his fallen comrade? But Jack Larson listens, and he's intrigued. He tells Andrea about James Huston. Yes, he remembers him. They flew together. Huston was a good pilot, quiet, brave. On March 3, 1945, they were on a mission together near Iwo Jima. Huston's plane was hit. It caught fire. Jack saw it go down. He watched his friend die. Jack never forgot. And now, 55 years later, a little boy in Louisiana is describing that exact moment, from the inside, from Huston's perspective. Jack doesn't know what to make of it, but he agrees to meet the Leiningers. In 2002, Bruce, Andrea, and James travel to a Natoma Bay reunion, a gathering of surviving veterans and their families. Jack Larson is there, so are other veterans who served on the ship. James is 4 years old now. He's shy at first, but when he sees the veterans, something changes. He walks up to them, he looks at their faces, and he starts talking. He mentions names, places, missions. The veterans are stunned. This little boy is talking about things that happened 60 years ago, things he couldn't possibly know. One veteran shows James a photo of the Natoma Bay crew from 1945. James points to a man in the photo. That's Jack Larson. He says, he's right. He points to another man. That's Billy. Right again. The veterans are emotional. Some are crying. How does this child know these things? Jack Larson kneels down to James's level. Do you remember me, James? James nods. You were there, when I got shot down. Jack's eyes fill with tears. Yes, I was there. I saw you go down. It's a surreal moment. A 4-year-old boy and an 80-year-old veteran, connecting over a shared memory from a lifetime ago. Over the next few years, Bruce and Andrea continue to investigate. They track down James M. Huston Jr. S family. His sister Ann Huston Barron is still alive. She lives in California. She's in her 80s. Andrea writes to her. She explains everything. Ann is skeptical at first, but she agrees to meet. In 2004, the Leiningers visit Ann. They bring James, now 6 years old. Ann shows them photos of her brother, James M. Huston Jr., as a young man, in his Navy uniform, standing in front of his Corsair. James looks at the photos. He's quiet. He studies the face of the man in the pictures. That's me, he says softly. Ann's hands tremble. She shows James more photos. Their childhood home, their parents, their dog. James points to the dog. That's my dog. I used to play with him. Ann gasps. It's true. James Huston had a dog. How does this child know? Ann is overwhelmed. She doesn't know what to believe, but the details are too specific, too accurate. This little boy knows things about her brother that no one outside the family could know. By 2005, James Leininger's story has gained attention. News outlets hear about it. ABC's Primetime does a feature. The story goes viral. Some people believe it. Others are skeptical. Psychologists, scientists, and skeptics weigh in. Dr. Jim Tucker, a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia, studies James's case. Tucker is the successor to Dr. Ian Stevenson, a legendary researcher who spent 50 years investigating reincarnation cases. Tucker has studied thousands of cases of children who claim to remember past lives. Tucker interviews James and his family. He reviews the evidence, the historical records, the testimony from veterans, the accuracy of James's statements. Tucker's conclusion: James Leininger's case is one of the strongest cases of past life memory he's ever seen. The details are too specific, too accurate, and James had no normal way of knowing them. Tucker writes about James in his book, Life Before Life. He presents the case as evidence that consciousness may survive death and be reborn into a new body. But not everyone agrees. Skeptics argue that James must have been exposed to information about World War II somehow. Maybe he saw a documentary. Maybe he overheard adults talking. Maybe his parents unconsciously fed him information. Bruce and Andrea Leininger insist that's not true. They've kept detailed records. They've documented everything James said and when he said it, and they're adamant James had no exposure to World War II history before the nightmares started. By the time James is 8 years old, the nightmares have stopped. He no longer wakes up screaming about plane crashes. The memories have faded. He still remembers some things. He remembers meeting the veterans. He remembers the photos, but the vivid, intense memories from when he was 2 and 3 are gone. This is common in reincarnation cases. Dr. Tucker's research shows that children who claim to remember past lives usually lose those memories by age 6 or 7. The memories fade as the child's current life becomes more dominant. James Leininger is a normal kid now. He plays sports. He goes to school. He doesn't talk much about James Houston anymore. But his parents haven't forgotten, and neither have the veterans and the Houston family. In 2009, Bruce and Andrea Leininger published a book about their experience, Soul Survivor, the reincarnation of a World War II fighter pilot. The book details everything: James's nightmares, the investigation, the discoveries, the meetings with veterans and family members. The book becomes a bestseller. It's praised by believers in reincarnation and criticized by skeptics, but even skeptics admit the evidence is compelling. The details are accurate, and there's no clear explanation for how James knew what he knew. So what do we make of James Leininger's story? Is it proof of reincarnation, or is there another explanation? Let's look at the evidence. James at age 2 began having nightmares about a plane crash. He described being a pilot whose plane was shot down by the Japanese. He named the ship he flew from the U.S. Natoma Bay. He named a fellow pilot Jack Larson. He identified the type of plane, a Corsair. He described the location, Iwo Jima, and he said his name was James. All of these details match the life and death of James M. Houston Jr., a real pilot who died on March 3, 1945. James Leininger had no normal way of knowing these details. He was 2 years old. He hadn't been to school. He didn't read. He didn't watch war documentaries. His parents didn't discuss World War II. The accuracy of his statements is remarkable. He didn't just say generic things like "I was a pilot." He gave specific names, places, dates, and details, and they all checked out. Veterans who served with James Houston confirmed James Leininger's statements. Jack Larson, who was there when Houston died, met James and was stunned by what the child knew. James M. Houston's family accepted James Leininger as the reincarnation of their loved one. Ann Houston Barron, James Houston's sister, believed James was her brother reborn. But skeptics offer alternative explanations. Maybe James overheard something. Maybe he saw a TV show or a book. Maybe his parents unknowingly fed him information. Maybe it's cryptomnesia, hidden memories from forgotten exposures. Bruce and Andrea Leininger deny this. They kept meticulous records. They documented everything, and they were skeptics themselves at first. Bruce, a devout Christian, didn't believe in reincarnation. He resisted the idea for years. It was only after the evidence became overwhelming that he accepted it. Dr. Jim Tucker, who studied the case scientifically, concluded that normal explanations don't fit. The details were too specific, too accurate, and too early in James's life for conventional explanations to work. So if it's not fraud, and it's not cryptomnesia, and it's not coincidence, what is it? The most straightforward explanation, according to believers, is reincarnation. James Leininger is the reincarnation of James M. Houston Jr. His consciousness, his soul, whatever you want to call it, survived death in 1945 and was reborn in 1998. The nightmares were traumatic memories breaking through. The details were real memories from a past life, and as James grew older and his current life took over, the past life memories faded. This explanation is uncomfortable for many people. It challenges deeply held beliefs about life, death, and the nature of consciousness. If reincarnation is real, what does that mean for religion, for science, for how we understand ourselves? But for the Leininger family, the veterans and the Houston family, the explanation makes sense. It fits the evidence, and it brought them peace. James Leininger's story is one of the most documented cases of child reincarnation ever recorded. It's been studied by scientists, featured in documentaries, and written about extensively. It's convincing to many and controversial to others. But regardless of what you believe, the facts are undeniable. A 2-year-old boy described details of a World War II pilot's life and death that he had no normal way of knowing. Those details were accurate, verifiable, and profound. April 2000, a 2-year-old boy wakes up screaming, "Airplane crash! Fire! Little man can't get out." His parents investigate. They discover their son is describing the death of James M. Houston Jr., a pilot who died in 1945, 53 years before their son was born. The boy meets veterans who flew with Houston. He meets Houston's family. He remembers details no one outside that circle could know. By age 8, the memories fade, the nightmares stop, James Leininger grows up normal, but the question remains, did he live before? Was he James M. Houston Jr. in a past life? Bruce and Andrea Leininger believe yes, the veterans believe yes, the Huston family believes yes. Dr. Jim Tucker, a scientist who studied the case, says the evidence is compelling. Skeptics remain unconvinced. They demand alternative explanations, but so far none fit the facts as well as reincarnation. James Leininger, the 2-year-old who remembered being a World War II fighter pilot, the boy who knew things he couldn't know, the nightmares that matched a real man's death, the evidence that challenges everything we think we know about life, death, and consciousness. One of the most compelling reincarnation cases ever documented, and a mystery that to this day divides believers and skeptics. Was James Leininger the reincarnation of James M. Houston Jr.? You decide.